right, well, here we are. We're going to start chapter 16. This is the last chapter I'll be posting for the semester. This chapter is going to be on antecedent control procedures. So if you remember what the main topic of this unit is and why it's a few more chapters than the other units, is that we are talking about functional interventions, or the techniques we can use to reduce problem behaviors that don't use punishment. Because remember, there's a number of reasons that we avoid using punishment. There's a number of negative side effects that go along with using punishment. So first we're going to attempt to reduce problem behaviors by using these techniques here. And we already talked about extinction, differential reinforcement, and so this lecture is going to be about antecedent control procedures. And hopefully you're already starting to get an idea of what you think these procedures might involve because of the word antecedent, and that means before. So we're going to be talking about things we can do before the problem behavior occurs to try and decrease the chances that the problem behavior will occur. So first I'm going to ask you just to brainstorm. So start writing some things down. Hopefully you have a piece of paper out already, because I like to think that you're taking notes while you're watching this. So just jot down, I'll give you a moment, some things that you want to do if you have an exam coming up that you need to study for. What sort of things do you do to make it more likely that you're going to study for this exam? This is an activity I have my class do when I'm teaching an in-person class. So take a moment, because some of the things that you come up with, or most of them actually, I bet are going to come and fall in the category of antecedent control. So I'll stop talking for a minute, and if you hear anything, it's probably the sound of my dog chewing his toenails. Oh, now you stop because you heard me say that. All right. Well, I will now move on. Hopefully you've written some things down. Here's some things that students have written down in the past. So if you want to study for an exam, you might figure out the best time of day to study. Where do you study? Who do you study with? You want to keep your books handy in your backpack. You might write out the date on your calendar when the test is going to be to remind yourself. And we're going to talk about all of these at the end of the lecture and figure out what category they fall into of antecedent control that we're going to be talking about. So antecedent control procedures that are identified in your textbook that behavior analysts use are things that happen in I'll read what's here and then we'll talk about what that means. We're going to be manipulating physical or social environment, so changing the physical or social environment to evoke target response or make undesirable response less likely. So I kind of think of antecedent control as a balance, as a two-part thing. You want to simultaneously increase, because remember the whole point of this is to reduce a problem behavior. But because we've already done our functional assessment, we know that this problem behavior is happening for a reason. So like we talked about with differential reinforcement, we don't want to think about just decreasing this problem behavior, because this individual is engaging in a problem behavior for a reason, right? It's getting them something, it's working for them. And so what we want to do is arrange our environment to make the unwanted behavior, the problem behavior, less likely to occur, but at the same time arrange the environment to make whatever replacement behavior we've identified more likely to occur. So I think of it kind of like a balance. You want to decrease one behavior, and as you decrease one behavior, you're increasing the chances of a more desirable behavior from occurring. And this, again, because it's antecedent control, it's different from differential reinforcement because we try to increase the chances of desirable behavior and decrease the chance of undesirable behavior by manipulating the consequences or the reinforcers that were available for particular behaviors. With antecedent control, we're going to make changes to the environment related to what happens before the behavior. So that's why it's called antecedent control. And so here are some examples. So if you're on a budget or you're trying to eat healthy, And with these, the problem behaviors would be spending money or purchasing foods, unhealthy foods. If those were your behaviors, you could arrange the antecedents or alter antecedents by creating a shopping list, right? That's something that you're going to have before the behavior of going out and buying, of shopping. So if you have a shopping list and a rule that you only buy things from your shopping list, that's going to increase the chances that you're going to be purchasing the foods that you want to buy, and decreasing the chances of either buying unhealthy foods or just running amok in the grocery store and spending a lot of money and buying things you don't really need. Another example is if you're taking a 2-year-old shopping who is grouchy when they're hungry, then you would say, why don't you feed your 2-year-old before you go shopping, or bring snacks with you. And so here the target behavior, remember we're talking about reducing problem behaviors, would be having a tantrum in the grocery store. And we're going to alter our antecedent by making sure we don't have a hungry toddler when we're in the grocery store. And so we're going to go through now. Your textbook organizes these in basically three different categories of things you can do to alter antecedents, and we're going to talk about each of those. So the first thing you can do to alter antecedents, remember, we're going to see it's like a balance. So we have one thing we're going to do to increase the desired behavior, or you can think of it as the replacement behavior. What are you going to do instead of the problem behavior? And at the same time, what we're going to do to try and decrease the problem behavior. Well, if you remember what SDs are, right? These are stimuli in the antecedent portion that let us know a reinforcer is available for a particular behavior. So if the behavior that you want to increase is eating healthy food, well, in order for that to happen, you have to have the SDs for eating healthy food available, which would be the food itself. So carrots, apples, oranges, whatever it is that you want to eat, salads, vegetables, those need to be present in order for you to engage in that behavior. And I'm going to jump down here since, like I said, it's like a balance. At the same time, you want to be getting rid of the SDs for the undesirable behavior. So if that's eating junk food, you want to make sure that you don't have those SDs present, which means you don't have the candy and the chips and whatever it is that you want, to easy microwavable food that you don't want, whatever it is that you're trying to avoid eating. Now going back up here for another example, if the behavior you want to increase is studying, then the SDs, you need to have present the SDs related to studying. So you want to make sure that your textbook is on the table next to your bed, or on the dining room table, or whatever it is that you're doing studying. You want to make sure that it's there as a signal to you to study, not buried under your bed or in your closet or somewhere. And at the same time, the things that compete with studying are probably things like socializing, using the internet. So you want to make sure the SDs for those competing behaviors aren't easily available. So maybe have the remote control for your television in a drawer under the TV rather than sitting on the coffee table, because you want to get rid of those signals. Well, I guess that's not socializing, that's other leisure, but you could say your cell phone. So many students carry their cell phones with them everywhere. They're always in their hands. I say students, but people like that too. My husband's never without his cell phone. If you want to decrease the socializing on social media, you might have a place where you set your cell phone down when you get into the house that's out of the way, so it's not always there as a signal. Like anytime you have your phone in your hand or you see it's an SD, it's like, hey, reinforcers available for logging onto Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is you're doing. There's a reinforcer available for that, so you'd want to remove those SDs for the undesirable behavior. For exercising, if you're trying to increase physical activity, SDs for that are going to be your workout equipment, clothing, shoes, whatnot. You want to make sure those are present in available. And on the flip side of that, again, whatever's the competing leisure activity, if it's video games or watching TV, you want to make sure the SDs for those are out of sight, so that it's not a constant reminder, right? You think of an SD as saying, hey, a reinforcer is available. Oh, there's a video controller. Remember, a reinforcer is available for playing video games. There's the TV remote. Hey, remember, reinforcer is available for that. You want to get rid of these so they're not constantly in your environment. And here's an example that I wrote up using, so the behavior that you want to decrease is checking social media, primarily because it's conflicting with reading for class. That's the behavior you want to increase. And so we have the SDs for reading or the textbook. The SD for social media is your telephone, the consequences. We talked about studying, remember, being maintained by negative reinforcement because you have a lot of anxiety about your test coming up. You haven't read anything. You read for the class. It reduces your anxiety, so it's negatively reinforced. Whereas your phone, you check social media, you get positive reinforcer for that. What you want to do then, if you're doing antecedent control, this is the part of the equation that you're going to make adjustments to. And so you're going to make adjustments to it by making sure your phone is hidden or out of sight. So the SD for this behavior has been removed, making it less likely you will engage in that behavior. And hopefully, because of that, it'll be more likely that you engage in the desired behavior of reading for class, because your textbook is sitting right on where you'd put it wherever it is that you're most. If you're in the kitchen and it's on the island is where you're more likely to encounter it, that's where you'd put it. If you're in your bedroom, you might put it, like I said, on your nightstand. Wherever it is that you're going to be most likely to encounter this, that's where you're going to be placing the SDs for that. Now, another procedure, antecedent control procedure, for decreasing undesirable behavior and increasing desirable behavior is arranging establishing operations. Now remember, establishing operations for desirable behavior. Remember, the overall category for establishing operations and abolishing operations are motivative operations. This is going way back to the beginning of the semester, so just briefly reviewing motivative operations. Those are things that alter how powerful a reinforcer is. And so if you want to increase your desirable behavior, you want to create a situation where the reinforcer for the desirable behavior is really powerful. So again, some examples of that is, remember we said that studying is maintained through negative reinforcement because you amp up your anxiety and then you study, and that causes the anxiety to go away. Well, you can amp up that anxiety or arrange an establishing operation, make studying more reinforcing by placing reminders all over the place. Imagine if you had reminders that popped up all the time, exam, big exam in 3 days, big exam in 2 days, big exam in 1 day, big exam in 12 hours. Like, each one of those notifications is going to crank your anxiety up even higher until you get to increasing the chances that you're going to sit down and study because you want to reduce that anxiety. And so those reminders that you place, don't forget you have an exam coming up, they function to increase, that's an establishing operation for studying, meaning it makes studying more reinforcing. Another example is, if you're working out in the field. I used to do this when I worked out in the field with children on the autism spectrum, and a lot of the kids used edible reinforcers, so pieces of snacks, goldfish crackers. If there was a particularly difficult task, I'd want to make sure to do that earlier in the session when they hadn't had as much food, because I know that food is going to be a more powerful reinforcer after a period of deprivation, or meaning when they haven't had a lot of it. And once you get full, that edible reinforcer is going to be less powerful. It's not going to work as well. On the flip side of that, remember I said it's like a balance. If you're making the reinforcer for the desirable behavior more reinforcing, you're going to try and make the reinforcer for the unwanted behavior less reinforcing, or present an abolishing operation, meaning you're trying to make the reinforcer for the problem behavior less powerful. So if we go back to shopping and buying junk food, if you're really hungry when you go shopping, we've all probably experienced this, you just start grabbing stuff off the shelf, like, oh, Pop-Tarts, I love those. I mean, I don't love them now, but I loved them when I was a kid and I'm super hungry, so maybe they're good now. I'm going to go ahead and buy some of those. Same with chips, ready-made food that's already there. You just start grabbing it because you're hungry, and that makes buying food really reinforcing. If you're trying to make better shopping choices, save money, eat different types of food, you're going to want to eat before going to the grocery store, because being full or satiated is an abolishing operation for eating. So that's going to make buying these foods less reinforcing. Similarly, if you need to be getting up early to work out, you're going to want to go to bed early because when the alarm goes off in the morning, it's going to be less reinforcing to sleep in if you're well rested. All right, and I did an example of these. Here's the example of the behavior we're talking about is eating. Now, it's like a balance, I say, because you want to increase eating good foods, but you also want to decrease eating foods that you don't want, like bags that I have, in this case, a bag of chips. So this would be the case if you're going, if you are going to a friend's house or someplace where a party where you know a lot of food is going to be available. That's probably not the type of food that you'd want to be eating. You would want to make sure that you are showing up not hungry. So here the SD is a bag of chips, so it's the same in both of these, but we have two different situations. In one situation, I missed that, you're hungry. You're supposed to be you're hungry, and that's an establishing operation. So if you're hungry, eating chips is going to be super reinforcing. We like chips, so I'd put yum on both of these because nothing's going to make them not taste good. But it's going to be more powerful if you're hungry. If you're showing up and there's a bag of chips and you're full and the behavior is eating, that's going to alter how reinforcing it is. It's going to be less reinforcing to eat it. So I put a lowercase yum. And if you're trying to make good eating choices, it's going to be much easier to not engage in this behavior if eating the bags of chips is only a little bit reinforcing compared to this situation where it's the value of this reinforcer, it's really reinforcing. You're going to be more likely to engage in this behavior in this antecedent condition than you are in this antecedent condition. So remember, this is altering the strength of the reinforcer. All right, another antecedent control procedure, and this is very similar, I think, to presenting and getting rid of SDs, but it takes it a step further. It makes you think about it a little bit more, because not only do you want the appropriate SDs present and you want to get rid of the SDs of the behaviors you don't want to see, you want to make how difficult it is, and that's what they mean by response effort, how hard it is to engage in the wanted behavior, the desirable behavior. You want to make that as easy as possible. You want to make doing what you want to do as easy as possible, and that's what it's meant by decreasing or diminishing the response effort, how hard it is to do something. You want to make doing the desirable behavior super easy. And so if you keep healthy food, not only do you want to have it available, like say you go out and buy carrot sticks and celery, well, you have the SDs available. But if you're like me, I'm not just going to pull an unpeeled carrot stick out of the refrigerator. I'm not a rabbit and start eating on it. I will peel it and cut it up and make it into carrot sticks and have it available. Sorry, I'm I'm sorry, hold on a second. This is, rather than starting and stopping this, you're just going to have to listen to me ask my daughter to get my crying baby. Lila, can you go get Liam, please? Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, so we are going to decrease the response effort for eating healthy food by not just having it available, but having it pre-prepared in a form that you want to eat it. So if you have it cut up and already in snackable form, that's going to make, when you're hungry and it's time to eat, it's going to make it really easy to make those healthy food choices, as opposed to you're really hungry and you open the refrigerator and there are unpeeled carrots, unwashed food in there that you have to put effort into making available for you to eat when you're hungry. So you're going to want to make it as easy as possible to engage in the desirable behavior. Again, your books, if they're right in your backpack, as you're walking around, if you have time to study, it's really easy to whip out your book and start reading a little bit, as opposed to if you had it kept, if you put it on your car seat so it was there, your passenger seat, to see it, to remind you to study. But if you're on campus in the building, it's not going to do you any good. You'd have to walk all the way out to your car to get it. You want to make it as easy as possible to engage in the desirable behavior. And with your workout clothes, if you have your workout clothes and your shoes and your water bottle and everything you need already packed up in a bag by the door, or if you're doing videos already set out on the couch in front of the TV, it makes engaging in the behavior, when it becomes time to engage in the desirable behavior, it makes it that much easier to do, which is going to increase the chances that you're going to do it. Keep doing that. And then related to that, again, remember I said it's like a balance. You not only want to make how much effort it takes to engage in desirable behavior, you want to decrease that. You want to increase how much effort it takes to engage in the undesirable behavior, or the behavior you want to get rid of. So related to that, if not only are you going to try and remove the SDs for junk food, now if you're like me, you just heard me talking to my kids, I don't want to get rid of all of the food that maybe I'm okay with them eating the Pop-Tarts or their Halloween candy. Not only am I going to put those SDs out of sight for me, but I'm going to make it really difficult, a lot of effort for me to get to them. So I might take them and put them in a cupboard above the cupboard above the refrigerator behind the cans of coffee, so that if I do get hungry, I can either reach into the refrigerator and get the snacks I already have prepared and have them now, or I have to go grab a chair, lug it into the kitchen, remove all of the canisters of coffee, climb up there. It's going to take a lot more effort for me to engage in the behavior I don't want to engage in. Or another example of that's not on here, if the problem behavior is in a classroom, say, and it's a student talking to their friend, an antecedent control procedure might be to alter the sitting arrangements in the classroom. So the amount of effort to talk to the best friend is going to increase if they're sitting on the other side of the room than if they're sitting right next to them. And that would be an antecedent control procedure. And studying in the library rather than home, not only do you have the SDs of your textbook and your notes and everything present, by doing it in the library rather than doing it in your home, you're making it even more difficult to engage in the undesirable behaviors of watching TV or talking on the phone, because you would have to leave the library in order to do those things. And so you might just, because it's easy, you might just stay in the library longer and engage in more studying, because you've made it more difficult to engage in the competing behaviors. And the way we think about this is that by arranging the antecedents, by manipulating what comes before the behaviors, you're trying to set the occasion. You're trying to set the occasion for the desirable response and not eliminate the occasion for engaging in the problem behavior. And these are the steps that you're going to go through when you're trying to reduce problem behaviors and increase desirable behaviors by using antecedent control procedures. You're going to identify what you want to happen and what you don't want to happen. Make sure that they're defined, you know what they are. Then you're going to ask yourself, can I reduce the response effort for the desirable behavior? Or can I make it easier? Can I make it easier to do what I want to do? Or someone else, if you're talking about someone else's behavior, can I make it easier for this person to engage in the desired behavior? And can I make it more difficult to engage in the problem behavior? Can SDs or prompts for the desired behavior be added? Sometimes you might find that the SDs for the desired behavior aren't even there. So you want to make sure that the SDs for the desired behavior are present. And again, on the other side of that scale, you want to make sure that the SDs for the undesirable behavior are not there. You want to remove them. And then you're going to, as much as possible, manipulate the MOs or change the value of the reinforcers. You're going to try and make the reinforcers for the undesirable behavior less powerful and make the reinforcers for the desirable behavior more powerful. All right, so here we're going back to that first slide at the beginning where I said if you have an exam to study for, what are some things that you can do? I listed them on here and then talked about how they fit into the antecedent control procedures. So identifying when will you study? Well, choosing a time allows you to choose a time when competing reinforcers are less powerful. So if you know, a lot of times students might say, I go to school, then I have a job, then I have other family responsibilities I have to do, I rush home, and then I start trying to study, and by the end of the day, they're really tired, they're really, really hungry. So there's a lot of competing reinforcers that might be more powerful at that time. If you can identify a time to study, maybe rearrange your schedule, get up early in the morning so that there aren't so the competing reinforcers of eating or visiting with people aren't as powerful, that might make it more likely that you can study. And we talked about this one already. Where you study makes a difference because you can get rid of the SDs for the competing behaviors and also increase the response effort for engaging in these competing behaviors. Who do you study with? This is important. We all like to study, well, maybe some of us don't, but oftentimes students like to study in study groups, but you have to be careful here because who you study with might often also be an SD for social behavior. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ever experienced being in a study group and having a really good time in the study group, and at the end of the study group recognizing that now I need to go home and study because I spent too much of my study group time talking and socializing and doing other things. Another thing you can do is keep your book in your backpack because that's presenting the SD for the desired behavior. And it's also decreasing the response effort for engaging in the desired behavior. And we already talked about this. Writing the test due date down on a calendar increases the anxiety, which makes studying more reinforcing. And that's altering the MOs.